Hi everyone, welcome to the patch notes rundown. This patch is mostly going to be focused on pro play. There are a lot of champions buffed and nerfed here, but most of the nerfs and buffs are very negligible, so with a few exceptions. So let's get right into it. Akali 30 base HP. So the thing with Akali is the way she works with her shroud. You will usually have the opportunity to strike first and to disengage. So with that in mind, and with how weak she is early, this shouldn't net you any kills, and this shouldn't save your life in most games. So it doesn't really matter. It also doesn't really impact how you'll play the early game. Um, she just needs to like get their first item and get going. One of the primary reasons I typically don't recommend Akali is her lack of wave clear. That's the primary reason. But she's not in a particularly great spot right now. Azir, health regen is down. Okay, this doesn't matter just because Azir outranges most champs, so he will usually his HP will usually be topped off. He's losing a tiny bit of damage on his soldiers late game, but it's only 8 damage at max rank, so it's very small. If you're good at the game, if you're good with Azir, then you should play him. Otherwise, stay away from him. These nerfs don't do anything. Briar is getting nerfed slightly. The thing with Briar is he's terrible versus good players. So yeah, low elo only. He's still gonna be good in low elo even with these nerfs, but I don't recommend him for high elo. So Draven's getting a small buff. I mean, if you're good at Draven, he was already good. He's basically a better Kalista if you know how to play him. He's getting 5 extra damage on his Q. It doesn't really do change anything. Yeah, Draven is the type of champion you just need to main on one trick. You ban Caitlyn and you pick him. That's pretty much it. Galio, this is one of the biggest changes in the patch. So he's getting his base MS going up, but the thing with Galio is the way he slows himself with the taunt and the way a lot of items in the game give percentage movement speed and other systems like Ghost. This actually is very important to be able to get taunts off. So a lot of Galios take Ghost, for example. His Q is also going down 1 second. Yeah, Galio is not typically not the kind of champion I would recommend to play, but as a counter pick, you can definitely play him. And as a counter pick to melee mages mostly, just because of how efficient MR is on this guy and the fact that he's really good in the melee champions. It's also really nice if you have a combo for the ultimate. Graves. Graves is a counter pick only. These buffs to his passive are really small and they don't really affect his early game anyway. The thing with Graves, you pick him into melee AD champions, especially if against melee AD junglers, and yeah, that's pretty much it. You just try to shit on them, and yeah. Wei. So Wei is getting a tiny increase to his passive AP ratio. So this isn't gonna do anything because Wei is pretty weak early until he gets some items. Then he's really strong until late game, then he falls off a cliff. And the 5% AP ratio isn't gonna do anything for his early game, obviously, but also it's not gonna make significant change to his late game damage. So yeah, that's it. Jarvan. Uh, Passive gets a 1% increase to current health. This this doesn't buff his damage in a meaningful way. It also doesn't buff his first clear and his clear health and speed in a meaningful way. So Jarvan is still like pretty average. Jhin, these are sizable buffs. Like the Q is getting a very large AD ratio. 9% AD extra, which is scales pretty well. The thing is, by the time you get to a point in the game where like the AD buff is really gonna be felt, you will usually already be outskilled by like actual hyper carries, like Kai'Sa, Kog'Maw, Xayah, Jinx, etc. So he's getting some move speed on his passive, but he's mostly damage gated. The move speed isn't gonna do too much for him, especially not when it's pretty rare for Jhin to not have enough movement speed as it is. Kai'Sa. Kai'Sa is one of the strongest champions in the game, just because for build diversity and how good the Mana Mune Luden Scriptloom build is. Thing with Kai'Sa is most people build her role, and that's why her win rate is relatively low. I will usually recommend people to play the build I just mentioned with Mana Mune, Luden Scriptloom. But if you happen to get some random kills early, you can still opt into going like for straight AD with Eclipse, which will also give you your Q evolve combined with the longsword and endurance. So the buff is only 5% AD ratio buff to the Q, but this also buffs the aforementioned Mana Mune build. So this is a buff for all Kai'Sa builds, realistically, because the AP build without Mana Mune isn't that great. Um, so yeah, play Kai'Sa, player AD, player mid, she's free low. LeBlanc. So LeBlanc is getting 5 extra damage on the Q. It's not gonna be enough to like get kills early or later into the game. It just doesn't do anything. W is it's gets 3 seconds shaved off, which is a lot, because she's mostly gated by this ability. But realistically, uh, she won't be doing like that much more damage with the buff to W. It's mostly just gonna be she's just gonna be more annoying, but she just does not have the damage to kill people as it is. Yeah, it's more to say with LeBlanc. I mean, one of the reasons LeBlanc just isn't good is she has to snowball. If she doesn't snowball, she's a minion, and she also has no good wave clear. Like her wave clear is pretty terrible. So yeah, I don't recommend people play LeBlanc. If you're good enough to play LeBlanc successfully in high elo, you don't need my advice. But you would have climbed and played in high elo with any other champion. Mordekaiser. So the big change to Mordekaiser's ultimate and now can be cancelled with certain abilities like Rengar and Power W, Olaf Alt. Uh, in some cases this will be noticeable, but in others, for example with the Rengar and Power W, you will just cleanse his Q in the Death Realm because that's an isolated Q, does bonus damage, and he will most likely survive anyway. Uh, so the Q is also having seconds shaved off it. Realistically, it shouldn't do anything for early lane. Basically, Mordekaiser wins level 1 and then loses level 2 and 3 really hard against a lot of champions. And the E is losing 10 damage flat, which is like it doesn't do anything because realistically you should never be hitting this ability against good players with low ping. Um, yeah, so the Mordekaiser isn't a good champion, even with these buffs. So one of the things I should have mentioned is you cannot use QSS anymore to cancel it. The thing is, this can be really annoying for junglers when they want to smite an objective, for example, and they're just building it because the Mordekaiser is constantly ulting them. The thing with Mordekaiser is a lot of champions can just outduel him or stall him during the ult, especially if you're able to reduce the damage of the Q with certain abilities, or use Zhonya's, or you jump over walls, then like he's no problem. And while this seems like a big change, it's actually not as impactful as people think it is. It will, like the situation this will be impactful with is mostly when the enemy jungle is smurfing and the Mordekaiser just ults him and presses Zhonya's to keep him off the objective. That's pretty much it. Olaf, so Olaf's gaining 20 damage on his Q to monsters. This is huge because this ability is really spammable. So this not only improves his first clear but also his subsequent clears. And Olaf scales incredibly well with the way itemization is right now. So play him for free elo. Rise getting a slight increase to slow and cooldown W. This is actually nice that you get in 2 seconds because this is last max ability. But the thing with Rise is Rise does not have an ultimate, so you're better off playing a champion with an ultimate to solo queue. Skarner. So they're making his queue like have less cast time and smaller lockout, and they're giving the buffing the AD ratio by 20%, but they're nerfing the W base damage by 10. The thing is, just because of the way his ultimate works, this champion can only function as a tank, realistically, and uh, for solo queue, I feel like uh, you would have won with any other. If your team's smart enough to auto someone and hit someone you are alting, then you would have won on any other champion in the jungle. So it's primary reason I do not recommend it for solo queue. It's just too team reliant. He's sort of like Taric. Silas. So Silas, the way Silas works, he has a penalty on his Q when he damages monsters, and now it's been removed completely. It already got a buff in the previous patches. So if you're actually good at the game, you know how ultimates work and they interact with Silas, then I think Silas is a better Echo jungle right now. This is actually a pretty big change for his clear. It's still not gonna be as fast as other junglers, but if you just look at the map and you get that first kill, then you're golden. Also, one of the things he has an advantage over Echo is that the CC is more reliable. So he's also a longer range. So yeah, fresh. Um, Base armor up by 2 MR. Okay, this I mean it's so small. It's like nothing worth to discuss. Same with Zac, like HP regen down. Okay, it doesn't matter. Zeri 30 base HP again, same. This does make her slightly more vulnerable to early all-ins. Uh, like this is probably the biggest one out of all these minor HP changes in the patch. So the Baron has like certain abilities based on which Baron you got, and now they deal more damage. So the only thing you just need to keep in mind is when you're low that you either dodge them depending on the Baron you have, or that you don't start Baron. That's pretty much it. So the grubs now spawn a minute later, which is a really big change because now it doesn't spawn at the same time as Dragon. So what would happen on live or on the previous patches is that you would usually end up trading grubs for the first Drake, and now that's no longer possible. So you need to contest both, or you can contest both, I should say, and you get the buff from the grubs earlier, and the buff is stronger, but realistically, the buff is still terrible. So the primary purpose of grubs is to get XP. That's pretty much it. Yeah, that was it for the patch. There's some changes. Like there was one really notable change for Rengar specifically. His Q and a power Q now apply critical strike modifiers for items. This means like Navariup now works properly, but also Thunder Sky works properly, which is an item that is really good on Rengar, especially for top lane, but it was bugged. So this is actually a huge buff to Rengar's top. For jungle, lethality will always be superior. So let's recap. Um, Azir doesn't do it, Nerf doesn't do anything, Briar doesn't do anything, Zac, Zeri. Zeri is actually like noticeable somewhat. Um, Akali, Draven. Galio is pretty big just because of how important movement speed is for him. Uh, Graves, yeah, doesn't do anything, he's still like counter pick only. So Wei, Jarvan doesn't do anything, Jin doesn't do anything. Kai'Sa, the change isn't that big, but she was already really good. So yeah, Kai'Sa's busted. Uh, LeBlanc change doesn't do anything. Olaf's really big for jungle, and it's like relatively small for top, but Olaf jungle could be really good. Same for Silas jungle. Rise Fresh don't really do anything. Mordekaiser isn't as big as people think it is. Skarner is like not a good champion for solo queue. So that was it for the patch. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye.